Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Build Your Brand webinar. My name is Jess Larkin, and I am the Marketing Communications Specialist at Cornerstone. And I'm joined today by Bianca D'Agostino from HubSpot, who's going to talk to you about how you can improve your website's presence. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to leave them in the chat box on your GoToWebinar dashboard, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. My information is right there on the screen if you'd like to get in contact with me. And don't forget to follow us on social media, where we post industry and Cornerstone updates and information. So follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube to give us a follow. All right, keeping it short and sweet, I'm going to pass it over to Bianca.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so I will share my screen. Window. Okay.
Perfect.
Great. Everyone can see my screen okay?
Yep, we're good to go.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I am really excited to be chatting here today on behalf of HubSpot to help you build your brand and improve your web presence, and also just alongside Cornerstone. Looking forward to sharing how SEO can help people find your business. Before we learn a little bit about me, I figured I should answer the question of what the heck is HubSpot? So HubSpot's CRM platform has all the tools and integrations you need for marketing, sales, content management, and customer service. Each product is all within the platform. This way you can do all of your business in one place. We have a fancy new website, so it's fun. So you can find a link to that at the end of the presentation. From here, let me answer a little bit about me. Hi, I'm Bianca. I'm an SEO strategist, a marketing manager at HubSpot, where I oversee the HubSpot blog and HubSpot Academy content. I'm currently Boston-based, and I'm a part-time runner, cookie enthusiast, and yogi. Very mediocre at those last three things. But as you get to know me, I felt it was really important that you know that I'm super close to my family. It's a house of all girls except for my dad and my cat. But before getting too personal, let's focus on one family member first. Meet my dad, Joe. My dad is a small business owner. He does home security and entertainment systems, home automations, that sort of thing. I grew up with him figuring out how to own and operate his own business while also supporting our family since about 2004. So I am super excited to be speaking to a bunch of small business owners today. Him and his partner, Sal, have grown their company a lot. They have a few employees, but it's less than 10 people. Funny enough, though, that is not really their biggest problem that they have. It's honestly just a lack of time. I'm assuming that this is something that is super relatable for the group here today. So my dad will usually have these thoughtful conversations with my sisters and I, always asking the same question: how can I grow my business when I'm super short on time? I'm assuming this has been said by every other business owner ever, probably. Now, there's a lot of different avenues that you can take, but in my experience in my personal life, but also through my experience consulting small businesses at an agency and making information like this available to people at HubSpot, I've come to this realization. You want to find solutions that will work for you. Now, I mean this in a few ways. You have to come up with and invest your time into solutions that make sense for your budget, your industry, etc. But you also want to invest in those precious assets into solutions that will have long-term value, ones that by putting the time and legwork in now will have long-lasting results. You don't want to spend all your budget on a Super Bowl commercial and have nothing left for the rest of the year. You want to be smart with your investments and work on plays that will have positive long-term impact. So let's talk a little bit of shop. Here's a starting point for building your brand and making your business more findable, as I like to call it. So step number one is the name of this presentation: build a brand. I work with a lot of data. Having a source of truth so I know what information is correct, up to date, and relevant is critical to getting my work done. A website can be that central location, that source of truth for your brand. This is great if you have people constantly asking you questions about where you work out of, what services you offer, and all those typical questions you might get asked on the regular. My dad likes to call his website his new business card. If you're still not convinced, Here's some data to show you the value that a website can add to your business. This graph showcases how over time there's been a strong, steady increase in the search term health insurance agent on Google over the past 5 years in the US. The audience is out there for your industry, and people are looking for their own for looking on their own for these types of services. It's now just up to you to be there in the right place at the right time. So you might be wondering what's web worthy. Listing out your services, providing a link for people to easily contact you, learn more about your business, and also resources so that customers can actively educate themselves on your services and industry are all really excellent assets for a website. Cornerstone actually has a really great navigation. We can clearly navigate to learn who Cornerstone is, what's offered, how I can be involved and connect to their team, either via their contact us link or their social media links, in addition to easily seeing what resources are available for me through their events and their blog sections. This is all really exceptional content that you can have on your own website, potentially at a smaller or a larger scale. But now that you've built your website, you want to build a really solid foundation. This way your website's created and it can really thrive in the internet environment. But I do want to flag the common sentiment where if you build it, they will come absolutely does not apply in this scenario. Once you've built your beautiful website and put it out into the universe, you can't just let it run free. It requires just a little bit of hand-holding to get it noticed by Google. For starters, I have a couple of tactics here that I'll walk you through. The first thing that you want to do is create an easy to read site structure. Similar to what I just showed with the Cornerstone link, with the Cornerstone website, you have really clear navigational links for you to follow. This way, it's really helpful for people that are entering for the first time, like I was myself. You additionally want to optimize your meta titles and meta tags. Now, that sounds super fancy and a little, it could sound like a lot, but if you're using a website builder, it's either automatically doing this for you or just with a few simple keywords and keywords put into some boxes, you're checking these boxes already. Additionally, you want to monitor your page speed. How many times have you been on a website and it's taken ages and ages to load that you just click out of it and you go to the next link? You don't want to be that bounceable website. You want to be the one that it loads quickly and people can get their information as efficiently as possible so that they stick around and learn to contact you. A next step is to place some valuable copy on your site's pages. You want it to be looking from a customer perspective. You want to make sure that you're answering key questions and giving them answers for information that they're seeking in a really easy to find way. Speaking of that information, you want to make sure that it's up to date. You don't want to have your incorrect phone number and old address or some outdated service or team members. You want to make sure that that is accurate and relevant for not only yourself, for your customers, but also Google. And then a final thing, again, if you're using a typical website builder, you're hopefully doing this at the same time, but you want to make sure that your website looks the same as it does on a computer versus your mobile phone. With the majority of searches being done on mobile devices nowadays, you want to make sure that you're reaching people exactly where they are. Now, not to toot our own horn, but HubSpot does have a free CMS or content management system tool. This is basically a website builder that will help you easily do all of these actions. It has a theme library, a drag and drop editor, website analytics, and a whole bunch more. However, if you're not using HubSpot, all of these things that I'm talking about are still possible, just not as cool in my opinion, with other website builders and tracking tools. I've dropped a few free resources and tools in the appendix for future reference. The most manual piece of the puzzle here is the actual content creation though. It's these two sections here, the keeping your information up to date and placing valuable copy on your pages. Making sure that your making sure that all of these done is intentionally throughout the site is going to be the most manual aspect. Now, the third step to making your website more findable is to optimize, optimize, optimize. You want to follow the best practices and grow from there. Now, one of the easiest ways to optimize and make yourself more findable is by utilizing your website to claim your Google business profile. By claiming your free profile, you can be easily accessible by potential customers in their searches. You can see exactly what keywords people search for to find you, get insights on clicks on your profiles, and more to help inform them even beyond your website engagement. It shows up in a search results page like this. When you see results like this, we call these rich results. They're also known as a result that shows up on your Google or your search engine of choice that's a bit more detailed than your typical URL and description. Potential leads will be able to easily see your rating, your contact info, and your website all within an easy click away so that they can learn a lot more. I do also want to highlight, though, that who appears first is very dependent on Google and what we call its ranking factors. So for example, my dad's business has a website, a Google business profile as well, but he shows up second when you search for home security companies in my area. You might find yourself asking the same question: why isn't your business the very first one on the list? If you are, then you first need to understand how Google decides this on a fundamental level. So let's eat. And by eat, I mean expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, aka Google's 3 key factors for evaluating content quality and rankability. So expertise is something, oh, apologies. I'm triggering my Google as we speak. Hey Google, stop. That's what you get for having a presentation that's all about that. Expertise is something.
No worries.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Expertise is something that you can show by listing your education, degree, and credentials, or it's something that you can build up by sharing content that shows that you really know your stuff. We'll touch on this shortly, but it's looking for actual or everyday expertise. It's asking the question, are you a credible resource? Authoritativeness is basically how popular the internet thinks you are. Not so much from how much traffic does your site get, but do other websites reference your site? Is that content that you have published linked and shared across other platforms? It's your Google clout. It's asking the question, do people interact, reference, engage with you and respect you as an industry leader on the internet? And finally, trustworthiness. It's all about accurate information. It's basically Google's vibe check on you. Are you someone that Google knows will share accurate, correct information with its customers? Is your info up to date? It's asking the question, is the content you're sharing correct? A few actions that you can do to act on this EAT qualities is to, again, place valuable content on your site. That's that content creation that we'll hit on in a moment. Getting backlinks or other websites to reference your site. And if Google views them as credible resources too, it passes on that type of equity. And for trustworthiness, having all that accurate, up-to-date information in your business profile. All of these things are free ways for you to act on all of these. However, on a difficulty scale, trustworthiness is going to be your easiest. It's all about just making sure that you're providing correct information. Now, expertise is more on a medium level. You have to put in some extra effort through educating yourself and educating your users on the industry, services, and also making sure that Google knows about it. That's where that content creation comes into play. But the hardest part is authoritativeness. So just like in real life, you can't just decide to be popular. You have to work for it. You have to build relationships, give something of value, and have people recognize that value. Same thing with being an authority on the internet. The hard part is just that there's a sea of competition that makes this a little bit unattainable for smaller businesses when there's just that much competition. So you really just want to focus on the trustworthiness and expertise, as that relevance is more important than authority in Google's eyes. Now, content creation based off of that insight might be what you feel is the next step for you in your site right now, now that you have a really solid foundation down. A great way to do this is by crafting content around what customers have questions on. An easy, free way to do this is just by doing some smart Googling. When you search for health insurance agent, some questions pop up in the people also ask section of Google. This is literally just a section of questions that people are frequently asking that can inspire content creation for a blog or a resources section. Now, not all questions will be applicable, but I've starred two that could be. It's all about doing just a little bit of searching and smart Googles from there. By creating valuable and relevant content for potential leads, you'll be able to attract and reach a larger audience through knowledge sharing on your site. Using a free tool like WordStream, you can see how Cornerstone is now ranking for keywords that you wouldn't necessarily think that they would be, but it's still really relevant. So for example, coverage transparency is most likely a topic for insurance agents. It makes sense to rank for this keyword and create content around it. You want to be intentional about your content creation though. So for example, back to my dad and his home security website. We wouldn't want him to write about exercising and working out or cookie recipes, sadly for me. But that's because it would be unrelated and not a result, it wouldn't result in qualified leads and traffic. Same goes with health insurance. All in all, be intentional with your content so that you don't waste potential leads' time, Google's time, or yours. Now, if you're feeling really inspired by some of that content creation, and you are being as intentional as possible, you can create a content offer. Now, this is something that is downloadable, usually free or gated content. And this is the exact model that we use for HubSpot in the HubSpot blog. These offers are so that potential customers can fill out their contact info, get a downloadable, helpful resource, and it generates a list of qualified leads, something you can do for you and your business. If you're thinking that you don't have time for this, but you'd still want to invest into this, that's completely fine. I'd highly suggest utilizing a freelancer to help you create solid pieces of evergreen content to build upon and have this kind of content creation. I have a list of resources again at the end of this deck that mentions a really popular freelancer resource called Upwork, which we also use at HubSpot today. So now it's time to review what you've built. Are your efforts really working? And truly, the proof is in the pie chart. Reviewing your analytics, whether in Google Search Console, the HubSpot CMS, analytics tracking, Google Analytics, or beyond, will provide you insight into your efforts and how it's impacting your business. You can see how you're ranking on Google, how users are interacting with your content, and any technical issues that might be wrong with your site. Seeing the ROI of your optimization efforts are going to be a key motivator for you to continue working on and adjusting your site. A few metrics that you'll want to look out for to see what's working and what's not is your traffic, which might be represented by clicks, impressions, which is basically how many times your site has been seen but not necessarily clicked on, and position, where you fall on a search page. And once you've reviewed your analytics, you know what works and what doesn't. It's time to iterate and make some adjustments. It's all about testing things out. Optimizing your site is like looking at a control panel. It's all about adjusting knobs, turning off some things and turning on others. It might be a constant turn and switching of different levers, but it's all about using data to determine what low effort, high impact actions you can take to gain qualified traffic and leads. So for my dad, he has his website, but now it's time to look into content creation and bolstering the foundation that he's laid with his site. For you, it might mean a Google business profile, linking your social media to your site, adding alt text to images, or starting from the ground up. From wherever you're starting, it's all going to make a positive impact just by taking the first step about building your brand. Now, all of these findability tactics that we've gone over today are really just foundational search engine optimization, or SEO for short. That can sometimes sound really intimidating. I remember when I first heard that term, introduced this concept to my dad and to other small businesses I'd consult with, and it just really felt overwhelming. So breaking it down as different ways to help your customers find you, your business, and to help gain traction and more potential leads, I think makes SEO feel a lot more accessible to non-SEOs and business owners who just don't have all the time in the world to focus on just their marketing efforts. Again, it all comes back to what I said in the beginning. Find solutions that will work for you, your budget, and your schedule. These tactics I've provided with you today are free, sustainable, and will have long-lasting impact for business owners. If you're looking to take this a step further, I think I'd highly recommend looking into the HubSpot Academy. If you're intrigued by the world of SEO and the valuable impact it can have on your business, I was as well. So take it a step further with all of these free resources that you can build upon from today's presentation. So I really want to thank everyone for their time. I've been really honored to speak here today, as helping small businesses is really close to my heart. So I hope this was helpful for you all. And again, I have all these free tools for you and your business linked at the back of the presentation. So thank you so much.
Awesome. That's a lot of really great information, especially for our brokers who maybe just have a basic website or haven't really felt like they can get started just yet. This is all great information for you guys to get started. It's a lot less intimidating than you think it is. I have a couple questions for you. It's got a little bit of time. The first question is, what are the most important metrics that you recommend we measure from our website? So not everybody can measure everything, but what are maybe the top 3 that you recommend you keep an eye on?
Absolutely. So those 3 that I had mentioned, traffic, which might be represented as clicks on your website through your analytics tracking system, that is basically how many people are feeding into your website. That's super important. You also want to look at impressions, which is how many people are seeing your website on a search results page, but aren't necessarily clicking on it. It's not saying that they aren't, but it's good to compare those impressions to your clicks or your traffic. And then the third thing, I definitely reference your position. You can see this in Google Search Console. See how you're ranking, how you're faring for certain pages and keywords, or just for your site as a whole. That will give you a pretty holistic view of, are people able to find you? Are they seeing you? And then are they clicking on you as well? So I highly recommend looking at those 3 metrics just at the very start.
Okay. How long does it take to see improvements when I implement these SEO techniques?
That's a really great question. So sometimes, depending on the size of the business, is really what determines that. So typically, Google can take anywhere from a month to 3 months to read your content. So if you publish your website, it might take about a month for Google to find it. Sometimes it takes less. It just depends on how busy it is. There are so many people, businesses, and pieces of content on the internet. So it might just take a little bit. So having some patience with these is really helpful. However, the more that you personally share your website, and people will find it more, people are clicking it more, so that's really helpful. So that kind of mitigates that gap for Google to help find your way. When you start adding pieces of content, the more you do it, the more authority that you gain. It could happen quicker, but usually it could take anywhere between a few weeks to a month. If it starts taking longer, then which you can see within Google Search Console, you might want to request for your site to be indexed again if it wasn't. So indexed basically means, did Google find this? Did it check it off and say, like, I know that's there? So that's kind of where that falls into play. So it's very dependent on the size of your business and how much you can do. But typically for a smaller business, it could take about a month.
Okay. This is kind of a specific question. Should I be worried about bots skewing the results of my analytics?
Ooh, that's a really great question. You shouldn't worry. It kind of depends there. So if you see that your website is just super spiky in your analytics, things just don't look consistent, you see just like an immense amount of bot traffic, which I'm assuming you won't see a ton of at the start, then that's when you question, is your content super spammy? Like, is it relevant to your site? How do you know how it's all about coming back to that intentional production of content. However, from there, it's really just about evaluating your content. However, Google is a bot in itself, so it will take time to crawl your website. So even though you see maybe a potential spike here and there that looks a little out of place, a bit of an anomaly, it could also just be Googlebot crawling your site to make sure that it's reading your content. If you see it's just consistent, not it's consistently not qualified traffic and it's just definitely bots and spam, then you really need to kind of take a hard look at your website and see what's actually working and what's not, and is it really relevant to my business.
All right, and my last question is this something that I can do on my own if I don't know anything about building websites, if I don't know anything about managing websites, or do you recommend that I hire help?
That is a really great question as well. I personally think that if you have the time, you absolutely can do this on your own. That's why I recommend some of these free resources like HubSpot CMS, because there's easy drag and drop. So if there's no coding involved, it's just, I like this piece, I'm going to put this here. Or you want to look at your analytics, you simply click on our, or you want to optimize your website, you click on the optimization tab, you look at our analytics tab. All of these things you can look at on your own. If you're looking into content creation and you want to create a lot, I recommend maybe looking for outside help, but that's very dependent on you and your team. If you know that you could have the time and also the interest to create relevant and valuable resources, then absolutely go for it. But it's really dependent on your business, your needs, and the budgets that you have. So for example, my dad and his small business, he does all of these things himself. A little bit of my help as well, but that's dependent on his business needs and what works for him. So it's 100% possible for you to do this on your own, but if you have the time and resources to invest into a freelancer to help you utilize some of these tools, that's completely up to you.
All right, awesome. And I did just want to say to everybody that Cornerstone uses HubSpot. We are a HubSpot customer, and we've been using it for the past year or so, and we have noticed a nice improvement to the way that we're putting out content and to the way that we're creating navigation on our website. So it's definitely something worth checking out if this is sort of where you're looking to take your business. And thank you all for joining today. And if you would like a copy of this presentation, you can email me at jlarkin@crnstone.com. And the recording is also going to be available on the Resource Center, along with all the other webinar recordings from this series and others. And if you have a few minutes after the webinar, please take some time to fill out the survey so we can learn what content you're most interested in and how we can improve this series. I'd like to thank Bianca for joining us today and offering her awesome expertise. This presentation was great. Thank you so much. And everyone have a great day and stay cool.
Thanks so much. Bye.